Let's dive right into part 4 of our explainer. We are finally at the cinematic culmination of eschatology, the arrival of the kingdom of God.
So what does it actually look like when the kingdom of God arrives? I mean, really think about that. For thousands of years, a king returning and a world being completely restored has been promised. But we have to realize this isn't just a hopeful idea. It's not a metaphor. It is a deeply anticipated, literal moment in history. A kingdom established, suddenly, dramatically, and decisively by him.
But to truly grasp the absolute brilliance of that arrival, we first have to establish the darkness that precedes it. Jeremiah 30 describes the time of Jacob's trouble. And this is a period of unparalleled, intense distress, focused specifically on Israel and Judah, before deliverance finally breaks through. It's the classic reality that the darkest night always happens right before the dawn.
And the original Greek terms used in the book of Revelation really dial up the intensity of this dark period. We actually see two distinct words for wrath here. Orge represents God's settled, abiding, judicial opposition to sin, but timos, that is a passionate, eruptive, boiling fury. In the climactic bowl judgments of Revelation, timos absolutely takes center stage. This isn't just generic suffering, it's the concentrated extremity of divine judgment.
Which obviously begs a massive question for us. Where exactly is the church during this crazy outpouring of orge and thymos? Well, 1 Thessalonians points to a promise of delivering believers from the wrath to come. Pre-tribulational interpreters point to this text to explain how the church is caught up, or raptured, prior to the specific eschatological wrath. They note that while the word church appears a bunch early in Revelation, it completely vanishes from the earthly narrative during those intense judgment chapters.
When you map this out, the prophetic timeline builds this immense, almost cinematic, dramatic tension. We move from the present church age straight into the intense pressure of the time of Jacob's trouble, peaking at the climactic wrath. Think of it like a tightly coiled spring, just gathering weight and tension until it culminates in the ultimate release when God finally and visibly intervenes.
And that tension snaps in a single moment, the sudden, sky-tearing return of Christ. Revelation 19 paints a picture that is honestly almost impossible to fully wrap your mind around. Heaven literally opens, and Christ returns, but not as a lowly servant. He's riding a white horse. He is radiant, judging, and waging war in absolute righteousness. It is a moment of just overwhelming power.
The contrast between his first and second coming is literally absolute night and day. At his first coming, he arrived as the suffering servant, meek, humble, submitting to the authorities. But at his return, the source material depicts him as the conquering king, ruling the nations with a rod of iron. It's a complete and total inversion of how he first arrived.
Which brings us to a massive, fundamental shift, where evil is confronted globally and power is redefined forever.
Because this return, it isn't just some distant spectacle in the sky. It's a sudden, physical, and global reality. According to Matthew 25, Christ actually judges the nations. The sheep and the goats are separated. This is a visible, global change in power. Evil is confronted directly. This isn't a symbol. It's an earth-shaking shockwave where the nations of the world are finally held completely accountable.
Now, amidst this massive global shift, the source material puts a very specific focus on the nation of Israel. In the dispensational view, Israel's journey unfolds in 3 distinct steps. First, you have the historical scattering of the nation. Second is the modern regathering, which many connect to 1948 as an initial fulfillment of Ezekiel's prophecies. And finally, the ultimate gathering of the elect at the second coming. In this view, this is Israel's remnant returning, which is seen as entirely distinct from the church's rapture.
Now, as with any deep theological study, interpretations on exactly how this unfolds do vary, particularly when looking at Matthew 24. Pre-tribulational views really emphasize the Jewish context of the text, the references to Judea, the Sabbath, the Temple, arguing these events focus exclusively on Israel. Conversely, post-tribulational interpreters point out that the text explicitly says the gathering happens after the tribulation, and they view this as a single, unified return and gathering of all believers.
Following that global shift, we finally arrive at the absolute restoration of the world itself.
And that promise is anchored by a very specific, incredibly famous number found in Revelation 20, 1,000. This passage details a literal 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. And this is the bedrock of the premillennial viewpoint, a magnificent era of unprecedented flourishing under a divine ruler.
Drawing from prophets like Isaiah, we get a vivid picture of what this millennial reality actually entails. This future kingdom isn't just a warm feeling in our hearts, it's a tangible, political, and natural restoration of the earth. Order replaces chaos. True justice replaces corruption. Weapons are literally beaten into plowshares as absolute peace replaces war.
So how does all of this connect to build a complete picture? Everything we've talked about in this explainer, the wrath, the tribulation, the deliverance, it all leads right here. We start with the call to watchfulness in our current era. We move through the intense outpouring of divine wrath. Then the sky tears open for sudden deliverance, and it all converges into the single spectacular millennial moment, the establishment of the earthly kingdom. It's a massive, brilliantly cohesive narrative of redemption. Now, holding this entire prophetic arc together is the crucial doctrine of imminence. This is the biblical teaching that Christ's return could happen at literally any time. The exact day and hour are entirely unknown to us. There are no necessary prophetic signs that must be fulfilled before the next event occurs. It could literally be right now.
Which brings us from a massive theological timeline right down to our personal day-to-day reality.
Because ultimately, this isn't just theology, it's a future reality. The pastoral texts are incredibly clear here. Regardless of what eschatological chart you subscribe to, the mandate is exactly the same: watchfulness, faithfulness, and readiness. The texts demand endurance and active participation in your faith right now. The real danger isn't just choosing the wrong timeline chart. The danger is living your life as if none of this is actually real.
Which leaves us with one final, totally unavoidable thought. If everything we've looked at today is true, if the sky will open, if the king will return, if justice will finally be established on earth, then the ultimate question was never just, when does it happen? The real question is, will you be ready when it does?